This is for educational use only. Our instructor, Mr. Rodon Ardenes, is allowing us to use this as an educational material.
So good day everyone. The lesson that we are going to tackle today or discuss is about the global food security, which will be presented by Group 3, led by the Cadet Maranon, and the members are the Cadet Gabisan, the Cadet Alburo, the Cadet Ducay, the Cadet Calunia, the Cadet Caracuel, and the Cadet Sacro. So this is the objectives of our lesson for today. First is identify the factors leading to global food security and examine the state of the Philippines in terms of food security during the pandemic. Second one is what are the 5 components of food security. Third one is what are the threats to global food security. And the last one is food security possible? So factors affecting the food security. So global food supply is not even. Some places produce more foods than others. So there are factors that affecting that. So some physical factors such as climate and soil quality, and human factors such as technology have historically controlled the quantity and type of food produced in any location. So today, there are many other factors that explain why some countries produce more foods than others. So the first factor is climate. So global warming is increasing temperatures by around 0.2 degrees Celsius every 10 years. Rainfall is increasing in some places but decreasing in others. Higher temperatures and unreliable rainfall make farming difficult, especially for those farming marginal lands who already struggle to survive. So even the countries who are advanced already can be affected by the drought. Countries such as Russia and Australia are huge exporters of food. When they suffer drought, there is less food available globally, and the global food prices increase, leaving the poor vulnerable. So next is the technology. Improvements in technology have increased the amount of food available. Technology can overcome temperature, water, and nutrient deficiencies in the form of greenhouse and irrigation and fertilizers. So this can incur an economic or environmental cost. The advanced countries import food across the globe all around year because they already have the advanced technology, while the less developing countries are struggling to how to maintain the food supply. So the next factor is the loss of farmland. The growth of biofuel market is taking up valuable farmland which is then not used for food. So without farmland, there is nothing that we can produce, especially the food supply. This is the only place that we can produce the food supply, which is very essential today to our society. So pests and diseases. Pesticides have increased the crop yields. So pesticide is a substance used to kill, repel, or control certain forms of plant or animal life that are considered to be pests. So farmers in advanced countries can afford pesticides, whereas most farmers in low-income developing countries cannot afford them. So that is the big difference in using technology in advanced countries and low developing countries. So water stress. Irrigation systems provide water for countries with unreliable or low rainfall. So irrigation can be double crop yields, but it is expensive to put these systems in place. So in using the water stress or irrigation or water irrigation, so water can be taken from either underground aquifers or directly from rivers, and both have the environmental consequences. So the next factor is conflict. So war forces the farmers to flee their land or to fight in conflict. Food can be used as a weapon, with enemies cutting off food supplies in order to gain ground. Crops can be also destroyed during the fighting. Food shortages have caused riots and conflict. The South Sudan region has faced conflict for 4 years, with 4 million people facing food insecurity. In the Darfur area, conflict has lasted years because of the disagreement over the land and the grazing rights. So the last factor is the poverty. When people have less money, they cannot afford food and they become unable to work. Families in developing countries spend much time, their income, on food. Reducing poverty is a key element in food policy for food security because poor people spend such a large share of their incomes on food, leaving them vulnerable to high food prices. And many poor people obtain much of their income from farming, leaving them vulnerable to declines in agricultural output. So that's all for the factors, and the next is to examine will be Jonathan Moranyon.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to examine the state of the Philippines in terms of food security during the pandemic. Excuse me, sir. So, food insecurity among families amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So, food insecurity is state where people lack regular access to enough safe and nutritious food for normal growth and development and an active and a healthy life. This may be due to unavailability of food and or lack of resources to obtain food. It contributes to the increase in incidence of nutrition deficiencies and undernutrition, resulting in weakening of the immune system, which increases susceptibility to COVID-19 and other viral infections. So, province, cities, and municipalities were clustered as low, medium, or high risk based on IATF announcement and number of COVID-19 positive cases. So, more surveyed households in low and moderate risk areas experience food insecurity than those in high risk areas, which include provinces and highly urbanized cities that have better access to food supply and government or private food donations. So, as you can see in the chart 1, food insecurity among selected households by area 2019 and 2020 in percent. So, some 62.1% of Filipino households experience moderate to severe food insecurity in 2020 amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, according to a rapid nutrition survey conducted by the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. And food insecurity among households in all areas increased by 21.9 percentage from 2019. Families in low-risk areas had the highest increase at 24.0 percentage points, followed by families in moderate risk areas at 22.9 percentage points. So, in figure 1, reasons for not accessing food during the SEQ among selected families. So, about 56.3 of percent of the households reported problems accessing food during the government-imposed enhanced community quarantine. So, the reasons for this inability include lack of money, 33%, limited public transportation, which is 21.6%, loss of livelihood, 19.5%, lack of access to adequate food, 10.8%, and and elderly who have no one to buy food for them, which is 5.1%. So, in figure 2, coping strategies used by selected families to avail food during the insecure. So, food insecure families through various ways to avail of food during the pandemic. This included purchasing food on credit, excuse me, 71.8%, borrowing food from relatives or neighbors 66.3%, through barter 30.2%, and while some adults reported that they limited their food intake in favor of children 21.1%. And in chart 2, food insecurity among households with or without children 0 to 12 years old 2020. So, the proportion of children are the surveyed household receiving supplementary feeding also went down to 11.9% in 2020 from 21.6% reported in 2019 before the pandemic. Fewer children, which is 54.9%, received vitamin A supplementation in 2020 compared to the 65.4% covered in 2019. Moreover, only 35.3% of children received treatment for the deworming program last year, much lower than 60.4% reported in the previous year. So, in chart 3, figure food insecurity among households with or without a percentage member. So similarly, almost 81% of surveyed households with pregnant members were food insecure in 2020, while about 72% of those without pregnant members were food insecure. And in chart 4, coverage of nutrition-specific programs for preschool children 0 to 5 years old 2019 and 2020. Household participation in the government's nutrition-specific program for children went down last year. Only 51.1% of children in the surveyed household were weighed in the Operation Timbang or OPT Plus program. The annual weighing and height measurement of all preschoolers below 5 years old to identify and locate malnourished children in community. This record was down from 83% recorded in 2019. And in chart 5, percentage of households that receive food assistance and frequency is among the assistance provided by the government was food assistance. Some 96.6% of households surveyed received food assistance from local government units, LGUs, or the private sector. On the frequency, 48.9% received assistance 2 to 3 times. 42.6% received food for more than 3 times, and 8.5% received aid only once during the ECQ. That's all, sir.
Good day, Mr. Ardenes. By the way, this is the Cadet Ducay Darrel speaking, and in this topic, I am going to explain some topic regarding to food security and its components. So, first of all, let us know what do we mean by food security. Food security is the measure of the availability of food and individuals' ability to access it. According to the United Nations Committee in World food security. Food security is defined as a meaning that all people at all times have a physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. Then, next is the example of a food security. So let us know what are the some examples. Examples including soup kitchens, food banks, school lunches programs, and other programs that give food to people in need without requiring any type of commitment and return. So let's go to the causes of food security. The reasons why people experience food insecurity include a lack of resources, including financial resources and other resources such as transport. Then the lack of access to nutritious food at affordable prices. Lack of access to food due to geographical isolation. And also, lastly, is the lack of motivation or knowledge about a nutritious diet. Then let's go to the impact of food security. The long-term presence of food security increases health and changes lives. Agricultural improvements bring the benefits of increased financial stability, and a more easily fed family empowers vulnerable and marginalized groups. And next is, how can we improve food security? So basically, here are some of possible solutions to food security. First is to reduce food waste, reduce risk of commercializing, improve existing and infrastructural programs, improve trade policies, promote diversification, close the yield gap, work towards defeating climate changes. So now we go to the 5 components of food security. But in this case, I will only discuss the first 2 of the 5 components of the food security, and the rest will be discussed by Alburo, since we have the same topic that assigned by our group leader. So, availability of... Okay, the 5 components of food security are availability of food, access to food, utilization of food, stability, malnutrition. So, availability of food. Food availability means that enough food is physically present for the entire population. India has attained self-sufficiency and food production for its population. Food availability is a function of supply chains and food reserve. And next is the access to food. Access to food refers to our ability to source good quality food food that's filling and adequate for our individual needs. For many, this means it's fresh and minimally processed and good for the community and planet. Access to food is determined by the space and money and determines one's food security and quality. That's all.
Good day, Sir Dines. So, I am the Cadet Sheildon Alburo, and today we're going to discuss the continuation of the 5 components of food security. So, the third one is the utilization of food. So, utilization is one of the components of food security. It addresses the body's ability to make the most out of nutrients in food that is consumed. So, utilization of food can be affected by factors such as poor storage, spoilage, cooking practices, food safety, and diseases such as worms or HIV or AIDS. So, that might affect sufficient consumption and digestions of foods. So, people must have access to a sufficient quality or quantity and diversity of food to meet their nutritional needs, but most of also be able to eat and properly metabolize such foods. So utilization can be affected by, first one is the nutritional values. So the nutritional values provided by the foods that are consumed as measured in calories, vitamins, proteins, and various micronutrients such as iron, iodine, or vitamin E. So second one is the health status. The effect of the diseases such as HIV, AIDS, or diarrhea on the ability to consume the food and absorb the and metabolize its nutrients. The third one is the food safety. So access to food free from food spoilage or from toxic contamination introduction during the producing, processing, packaging, distribution, or marketing of foods, and from foodborne diseases such as salmonella. So, and the last one is the preparation and consumptions. So, the resources such as cooking tools and fuel, knowledge and ability to prepare and consume food in a healthy and hygienic way. So, utilization of foods depends on the food safety, food quality, nutritional knowledge, preparation, clean water, sanitation, and healthcare. It also ensures when food is nutritious and can be adequately metabolized and used by the body. So the second one, the fourth one is the stability. So stability is one of the components of food security. It cuts across and affect all the other components. Foods may be available and accessible to people who are able to utilize it effectively. But these states of affair needs to be enduring and so stable over time, rather than being a temporary state that is subject to fluctuations. So, food may be available and accessible to people who are able to utilize it effectively, but to avoid increases in malnutrition and in order for people not to feel insecure, these states of affairs needs to be enduring rather than temporary or subject to fluctuations. So, stability describes the temporal dimensions of food and nutrition security. Respectively, the time frame over with food and nutrition security is being considered. So, stability is given when the supply on household level remain constant during the year and in the long term. This includes food, income, and economic resources. Furthermore, it is important to minimize external risks such as natural disaster and climate change. Price volatility or volatility, conflict, or epidemics, though activities and implementation improves the resilience of households. Such measure includes insurance against drought and crop failure as well as the protections of the environment and the sustainable use of natural resources like land, soil, and water. So stability depends on maintenance of all three pillars over time. No risk of loss of supply due to economic, political, or environmental factors. It also ensures when there is permanent and durable access to food. And lastly is the malnutrition. So malnutrition determines a person's ability to lead a healthy life and occurs when a person is not able to obtain the right variety of nutrients in the right amount from their diet. It is an umbrella term that includes overnutrition and exists of food energy, undernutrition, a lack of food energy, and micronutrients such as protein. The micro the micronutrients deficiencies, insufficient micronutrients such as iron, vitamin E, or iodine. So your body needs a variety of nutrients and in certain amount to maintain its tissues and it many functions. Malnutritions happen when the nutrients don't meet their needs. You can be malnourished from an overall lack of nutrients, or you may have an abundance of some kinds of nutrients but lack other kinds. Even the lack of a single vitamins or minerals can have serious health consequences for your body. On the other hand, having an excess of nutrients can also cause problem. Also, malnutrition is a serious condition that happen when your diet does not contain the right amount of nutrition or nutrients. It means poor nutrients can refer to, which is the undernutrition, which means that not getting enough nutrients, and the overnutrition, which means that getting more nutrients than needed. So that would be all, sir. Thank you.
Good day, Mr. Argenes. I am the cadet Clein T, Calunia, and I am going to discuss about the threats to global food security. So, what are the threats to global food security? So, for centuries, food security was interpreted as the possibility of providing food produced in a given country in full or in the majority to satisfy the demand of all inhabitants. So this meaning of food security has changed along with development of trade and international specialty. The rapid growth in worldwide food production and free international trade has enabled the countries with disadvantaged conditions to purchase the necessary food from other markets. Access to food depended on incomes and not national production. So financial security prevailed over food security. This perspective was influenced by economists. So, who wanted to treat food and agrarian products just like the other goods and make the volume and structure of domestic food production subordinate to market regulations and the cooperative cost rule. Food security is of fundamental importance for human existence. Food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. So, the food system is bending under the intense pressure of the world population growth, increasing demand for food, in particular meat and meat products, as well as milk and dairy products. So security, water, and land resources, and the fight for arable land with producers or biofuels, industry, and urbanization. So climate change, the vanishing of biodiversity of ecosystems, and the diversity of agricultural cultivars. New plant and animal diseases, and increasing energy and food prices. The losses of food and waste food, as well as speculations in the market, will have a disadvantageous impact on global food security. So, these are the threats of the global food security. The first is the world population growth. In the last 50 years, the global population has increased from 3 to 6.8 billion people, according to demographic forecast. So in 2025, the Earth will be inhabited by 7.4 billion people, and in 2050, 9.1 billion people. So the next is the increase of food prices. So global food crisis that began with the sudden increase in food prices all over the world resulted in an increase in the cost of food products imports, especially in developing countries dependent on import, and had catastrophic effects on the household budgets. So the increase in prices is being felt the most by the millions of the poorest people. It is estimated that global food prices can increase by 70 to 90% by the year of 2030. So, and that's without calculating the impact of climate change, which would cause prices to double, the disappearance of the variety of agricultural plants species. Biodiversity in agricultural includes, in addition to natural habitats and wild species of plants and animals, including genetic resource for agriculture, which consists of local crop varieties and livestock breeds. Diversification of agriculture is the only and most important method of achieving food security in a changing climate. So the increase in the area of scarcity water and the limitation of availability of the land. Water is one of the most important factors deciding the fate of human being, because water resources are decreasing in many countries due to climate change. So food losses and waste of food. The next is the food losses and the waste and food waste. So food losses and the waste of food are two different issues. So the food losses occur primarily in the low-income countries as a result of the lack of adequate infrastructure. So food losses occur mainly at the production stage, and losses at the stage of consumption are much smaller. So that's all for the threats to global food.
Good day, Sir Ardenes. I am Decadent Neithel Manuel M. Caracuel, and I'm going to discuss what are the threats to global food security. So first, I must define what is the threats mean and food security mean in order to know my classmate what is the definition of each. So threats, when we say threats, is a statement of an intention to inflict pain, injury, or damage, or other hostile action or someone in retribution for something done or not done. While a food security, the state of having reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable, nutritious food. So a food security is going to be a challenge in the years to come, but it is a cause that has to be fought for organizations like the World Food Organization program and the Food and Agriculture Organization are devoted to ensuring global food security for generations to come. And global citizens everywhere are making a difference by going organic, reducing their carbon footprint, and raising their voices on how they want their governments to react. So there are let's talk about the threats of global security. So there are six main threats of global food security. So first we have the food issues. So we see our supermarket and groceries are filled up with various food each time we visit, so it's rather hard to imagine there is such a food crisis going on. But now that there is in impoverished countries, men and women and also the children subsist on just on one meal a day, and nutritionally barren meal at that. Farmers who toil on the fields that get the compensation they deserve for all their back-breaking efforts. As a population continues to rise, demands for food will increase too. So second, we have the climate change. So this is a food security biggest challenge, because climate change is a clear indication that nature's balance is messed up. Weather patterns become erratic, and more intense temperatures either go up or dip, and also the sea levels rise, and landscapes drastically change. Sadly, the plants, trees, and also the wildlife simply don't have enough time to evolve to adapt to the new conditions. And the third one is the aging of farmers. The aging farmers, I mean, we have a lot to thank farmers for. Without them, who would grow our food? That's why the rapid decline of farmers, old farmers aging out with few young ones to replace them, is a big concern. The next generation is hesitant to go into farming because of lack of capital or own land. Others are drawn to careers that are more financially rewarding, easier, and prestigious. So, and the fourth one is a soil erosion. So according to the WWF, we've lost half of the topsoil on our planet in the last 150 years. That's pretty serious, because the topsoil happens to be where plants get most of their nutrients. Deforestation and incorrect agricultural practices such as overgrazing and use of pesticides are to blame. So the topsoil gets washed into our rivers and lakes, polluting them and affecting aquatic life, or else they clog our waterways and contribute to floodings. And also the fifth one is the genetic engineering. The genetic engineering has always prided itself as a well-meaning solution to many of agriculture's problem: how to resist pests, how to get better, faster yield, how to have a vitamin fortified crops, how to fare in extreme weather conditions, and also the etc. So the last one is a land development. Agricultural land turned into developed land is another serious threat to food security. Once that land is developed for buildings, we forever lose one more patch of land that could have been purposed for food production. And that's all, sir. Thank you.
Hi sir, I am the last member of this group, and my name is Sacro, Julius, SRA. What is food security? So food security is the measure of an individual's access to food that is nutritious and sufficient in quantity. Some definition of food security specify that food must also meet an individual's food preferences and dietary needs for active and healthy lifestyle. So what are the different levels of food security? The concept of food security can be broken down into four concepts known as the four pillars of food security. So availability, access, utilization, and stability. So availability simply refers to the existence of food within a community. Access, simply having enough food in community, means very little if there is poor access to it. So utilization, not all food is of equal or sufficient value, or to be secure, it is crucial that the food being assessed is of a good quality. So last is stability. Good food stability means that access, availability, and utilization of food remains relatively stable over time. So how is food security measured? As we already discussed, food security is a multi-phase concept which begs into the question, how is food security assessed? So perhaps unsurprisingly, there are several facets and method used to assess food security. So first is estimating calories per capita, household income and expenditure surveys, measuring individuals' dietary intake, measuring individuals' height, weight, and body composition, and lastly, reports of individuals' experience of food security. So what are the main threats of food security? We have discussed the main threats to food security in the section exploring the cause of food insecurity. However, this list is not exhaustive. Recently, the COVID-19 pandemic has threatened the food security of millions of people worldwide. So reduced incomes, increased employment, and higher food prices in many regions, and also have greatly reduced access to food for those affected. So, furthermore, necessary border restrictions and lockdowns brought in to stop the spread of COVID-19 have caused disruptions to the transportation and production of food. So, is food security possible? So, yes, because food security means availability, accessibility, and affordability of food to all citizens of the country at all times. So, the poor households are more vulnerable to food security whenever there is a problem of production or distribution of food crops, and also includes soup kitchens, food banks, school lunch programs, and other programs that give food to people in need without requiring any type of commitment in return. So what affects food security? Food security is strongly influenced by intricate social, cultural, political, economic, environmental factors, and food security can be disrupted by many things such as climate change, disempowerment, poverty, natural disasters, and conflict. That's all, sir. Thank you.